imagine being at a restaurant and getting a waiver as your side dish. That's what happened to an American who ordered a cheeseburger in Toronto. He asked for the ground beef patty to be cooked medium instead of the standard well done. In a post on Reddit, an American said they ordered a cheeseburger at the Toronto Airport Hilton restaurant and wanted it to be cooked medium, but was taken aback when they were handed a waiver with their burger, clearing the hotel of any liabilities. Telling CTV News, "I already had my first bite but stopped eating and did not sign the waiver. I was shocked, to be honest with you," adding, "I lost my appetite. I felt they did not have confidence in the food they are offering." The customer may have been surprised, but this food safety expert wasn't.
E. coli 157, even though it's quite rare these days in ground beef, it does happen. And with E. coli 157, as we saw with the Calgary outbreak in the daycare centres, it can be fairly devastating disease, not only the initial symptoms, but the long-term symptoms. And they always say it's certainly not worth taking the risk.
In a statement to CTV News, a spokesperson for Hilton Hotels said, "When guests request a cooking temperature for meat that is below the minimum required, our hotel provides a waiver as an additional food safety measure with language consistent with what you might see printed at the bottom of restaurant menus." According to Ontario's Food Safety Guide, ground beef should be cooked to 71 Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit. But in the U.S., restaurants will often ask you how you want your burger done.
I suspect, and I might be wrong, is that the hotel was just kind of saying to the customer, "Are you sure about this?" But certainly if it came to litigation, certainly it might be a bit messy, but they would win out in the end. So the customer has to be protected from themselves sometimes.
All right, here's the question we've been putting to you all day, and it is, would you eat a meal if it came with a waiver? 70.7% of you say no, you wouldn't. Still, nearly 30%, that's 29.3% of you said, hey, yeah, I would. Let's bring back Laura and Mel. Mel, let's start with you on this one. If they bring you the meal and then bring you a waiver, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, if I was asking for raw beef, then I think that's pretty reasonable. I'd kind of expect it. I guess we also see this kind of come up with those really spicy things sometimes. You know, again, it's about protecting the customer from themselves, like the expert was saying there. You know, in the case of these raw meats, we see that on the bottom of Canadian menus all the time. I worked as a server for a long time, and the amount of Americans I had to politely say, "No, we don't cook our burgers medium." You know, they'd be mad, but that's protecting me. That's protecting the restaurant from really just more of a kerfuffle than we deserve if that American gets sick from eating their burger. So I think that it's very reasonable in this case. I think that, you know, causing a stink online about these sorts of things is something that people love to do. But I think that it's about protecting the customer from themselves, protecting the business, the establishment, the people who work there. You know, if I brought him that burger and he got sick, could he come after me? You know, those are things that are at top of mind, and better safe than sorry, whether it is a kind of raw burger or something super spicy or something entirely different. You know, you get waivers for those eating challenges too, right? Where you say, like, if I don't eat the whole thing, I have to pay for it. Like, I think there's lots of cases where that can come up, and it's very reasonable.
Laura, I know it's interesting that, you know, you get a bit of sort of legalese with your food order. But what I can't understand is how in the United States, where, yeah, you can ask for your burger to be cooked any way that you want it, are there more legal fights over this than we hear about? Because it would seem almost shocking that we haven't heard more about this.
Well, a couple thoughts on that. First of all, when I order food, I don't want a legal waiver as a side dish. Right? Give me French fries, give me whatever, but not a waiver. If you're in Canada and we have a certain standard for cooking our hamburgers because of concerns, then I think the hotel does what my colleague did as a server. Say, we serve our burgers this way. Is there something else on the menu I can interest you in, right? That's how you handle it. You don't put a legal waiver and say, oops, could be E. coli, I hope you're fine. And as for, going into a country and demanding they do the food the way you're used to, when I was in Rome this summer, I ate as the Romans ate. I didn't tell them how how I wanted them to make the sauce on my pasta. I just ordered it and ate it the way that the Romans make it in Rome. So I think we can say, with all due respect, this is how we cook it here. There might be something else that interests you. In terms of hearing more stories about it, I lived in Japan for a little while, and they could eat a pork dish that I couldn't. Every time I ate katsudan, I'd get sick because the way they cooked their pork, I guess to the temperature they cooked it, my stomach was not adjusted to, but they were all fine with it. So I think we get used to the way that we eat, and coming into another country, if you call up room service and say, I want you to make it the way I have it at home, well, you're not at home. So eat it the way that we serve it. Restaurants should stand behind their food. They should never put anything out that they think will harm a guest. Because even if that guest doesn't litigate or can't litigate because of the waiver, the story still goes out there. Supposing that this individual got sick from that burger, they could go on Yelp or any other social post and destroy the restaurant's reputation because they served unsafe food. Nobody will care about the waiver. They'll say, what was wrong with the chef? What was wrong with the quality control at the pass? What was wrong with the person who brought it to the room? Didn't they care? Right? So I think it's a mistake to do that. I think you just stand by the quality of any work you do, especially if you're feeding people.
Yeah, and a quick warning to anyone who is going to Italy, there are certain pastas that if you ask for Parmesan cheese on it, they will give you a dirty look because that's not how it's eaten there. And I'm sure, Laura, you know that as well. But Mel, I wanted to ask you, have you ever had that sort of situation when you were a server where you said, look, that's not how we cook it? Did they ever respond, well, I'm the customer and the customer's always right? Because that plays into this.
100%. And this whole waiver situation from this Hilton, it's giving, they had some customers complain at some point or another, and this is coming backtracking. I've never worked in a restaurant that has something like this. A policy like this only happens because something spurred it. As for my experience, I usually would just get some salty and like looking down their nose at me as if they are more cultured than I. Canadian. That's what they say about Canada. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in Canada, eat a charred, crispy burger. But I think that at the end of the day, they don't have to eat there. It's you come in, you abide by the rules of the establishment that you are walking into, or you don't. I think that that's very reasonable. It's not like this is the only place in the world to get a burger. It is, I think, small potatoes, small potatoes when it comes to all of this stuff. But I think it's very reasonable. And Laura was talking about quality standards. That's what those policies are there for. That's why we part of the quality standard is the fact that we, in Canada have these regulations around food safety and food service and things like that. So again, I've been out to dinner with American friends, had them ask for a medium burger, had the server say no, and then the friend says, oh, and then just moves on. And that, I think, is the best response here overall.
And Laura, I wanted to pick up on something that Mel said. The fact that they even have a waiver means that this has happened to them before. How interesting is that to you?
Well, it's possible. It's possible that they have avoided litigation in the past, and they're like, forget it, from now on, people sign a waiver if they're going to ask for undercooked beef. So that's possible. It's also a large chain, right? So it could be that they're just lawyered up at that level of risk, and they say, if we're feeding X amount of people and they are making these kind of requests, let's just lawyer up, let's get the waivers out kind of de facto whenever we serve a burger. I mean, so it's possible that that's why this is happening. It's just sheer volume, and they're trying to protect themselves. But I think to the bigger point that I was making, and I might be taking this a little personal because my son is a chef, don't put anything out of the kitchen that you wouldn't eat. Don't put anything out that you don't taste, right? It's quality control. That's what makes people come back and order more food, is that they know that the food that was prepared for them was prepared with great care. And so that's why we want our restaurants to be clean. That's why we all love watching, Ramsay when it goes into restaurants and Restaurant Nightmares or whatever, because we don't want to be eating in an establishment that isn't protecting our food. So I think the Hilton has gone a little too far with this. Just get better quality control in the kitchen and let guests know, put a little line that burgers are served well in Canada according to our safety standards. That's all you need to do. Put it in the menu.
Yeah, and don't have that sort of side, because we know that person didn't even finish the burger, and we're talking about it now. So that's maybe not such good press. Okay.